Okay. All right. It's interesting we had the three of us here because a lot of people might have thought that Professor Kozlowski and I would sort of say the same thing. And actually, the truth is that we come from very different perspectives in terms of how we talk about relationships and communication and all that sort of thing. So I'm going to really speak tonight specifically about how there are differences between men and women with regards to dating and relationships, but specifically looking at the different stages of relationships, like how men and women are different in dating, in the engagement period, and in marriage. And there are very, very subtle differences. And I'm going to be rooting some of the things that I say. I'm going to use some examples from some of the clients that I've worked with. You won't know any of them because it's incredible. I give almost no details about these people, and they all sound almost the same. So you don't have to worry that you'll know anybody. Don't even try to go there. Okay, so I'm going to specifically look at when it comes to dating, whose job is it to ask the other one out? That's something that's a major question that comes out time and time again. I'm also going to look at differences between what attracts men and women, hot topic, something that lots of people want to know about. And we're going to look specifically at styles of communication, how it is that men and women speak differently, and why does it sometimes they appear to be speaking at cross purposes. And we're going to look at attitudes towards feelings, which is something that is very much connected to how we communicate because at the end of the day, feelings informs and shapes the way that we connect and communicate with everybody. Okay, so let's start talking about dating. So who should ask whom out? So I think if you were to ask most men, even in this day and age, who should do the asking out, most men would say them, right? And why? Because generally speaking, especially at the beginning of a relationship, they want to be the ones who feel that they're in control. They want to feel that they're assertive. They want to feel like they're the guy, right? And if you were to ask most women who should do the asking out, most women would say the men, right? They agree on that. And it's really interesting. So if you look about 100 years ago, it was very clear. This wasn't even a question, right? Men knew that it was their job to ask women out. And what lots of people thought was that, this was a very passive approach for women, right? Women just kind of sitting there doing nothing. That's not true. Women had a very active part in the dating process. What was their role? To
say no.
Before you get to that side of things. To encourage the guy to ask them out. That was their role. And they took that role very, very seriously. How did they do that? What did they do? They starts with an F. End with a T. You got it. They were flirts. They knew how to flirt, and they did it really well. And if they didn't do it, they didn't get anywhere, right? So, and they also worked really, really hard on primping and doing all that stuff that a lot of women today aren't so into so much. So, but that was their role. They saw that as their role, and they took it really, really seriously. Okay, so now what we have happening is that men still, even though they still think it's their job, they feel a little bit more challenged about their job. Why? Because we see one another as more of an equal. So they feel a little bit more hesitant about whether it actually is their role to ask women out or not. So there's a lot of question marks around that. Is it really my job? Should I try to get her to ask me out? And vice versa. She's not really so sure either, and she often wants to be the more take charge kind of person because women are that way in society today. We're leaders in so many different areas. Why shouldn't we be leaders when it comes to relationships, right? But so what happens though is that women in today's society aren't flirting as much as they used to, and they aren't making it very clear and obvious that they're interested. And very often they're making it really challenging for the guys to even know whether they should go for it. And if a guy isn't almost 100% interested, and I mean not 99%, he's got to be 100% interested that a girl is interested in him. You're laughing, but it's true. He ain't going to go there. He's just not going to go there at all. So one thing, if there's one take-home message that we all need to be aware of, is that as women, we need to make it pretty clear and obvious in some sort of way, shape, or form that we are interested, and we need to sort of get that message out there. And something that I hear time and time again with the clients that I work, the single clients that I work with, the guys often feel very despondent when they're going out there, they're going to kiddishes and shul and what have you, and these women are like in a scrum, like in rugby, they're like all like this, hiding behind one another, and the guys can't make a beeline, they can't go anywhere. You girls, you got to spread out there, and you got to like make a little eye contact and actually show that you're interested. That's what you got to do. If you want to enable the guys to like go for the gold, you got to help them out. Okay. So how is it that men and women are attracted to one another? So men, and this is something that's based on research. This is not my opinion. Men are generally start out becoming attracted through what they see, through their eyes. Women become attracted through their ears. Now, obviously, everyone has to see and be seen. However, a guy can show up on a date looking fantastic, but if he's not going to have anything substantial to say for himself, the woman will be disinterested in a second. So, too, if a woman comes to a date looking like she just came out of the gym with not, the daggy stuff, the t-shirt and whatever, and she doesn't look like she's put any effort into it. Even if she's the most fascinating, interesting person in the world, he won't be able to get past that. So, and the challenge is that many women, at the end of the day, they don't want to objectify themselves. They don't want to have to make such an effort. They feel that they want to just be loved and appreciated for who they are. But we need to help the guys out if we want that to happen, right? We need to look our best, and we need to enable them to see what they want to see. So we do need to make an effort in that way. And then once they get to know us, then we can start wearing tracksuit pants and things like that. Okay. And vice versa. And vice versa. Just as women want to make an effort to look good, men have to come to a date prepared. They got to be interesting. They got to come up with things to say. They got to real turn off to men. And as in the book Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, she suggests that women face a real challenge in the workplace because on the one hand, they're expected to perform like a man, but on the other, when they display similar behavior traits of men, they're often pushed away. So women are pushed to find another way to get their thoughts across. And it's interesting because I just saw an article in today's paper that the CEO of the New York Times was just fired because she was too pushy. And my sense is she didn't read Sheryl Sandberg's book because had she changed her approach to speaking to people around her, she wouldn't have come across in that aggressive, pushy manner that men can get away with. So what she suggests is that women balance their assertiveness with their femininity, right? So it's not being like a bloke, not being like the men, but finding a way of speaking in such a way that's a little bit more gentle. And I think Professor Kozlowski referred to this in his talk as well. So while the other thing that's really interesting is that while most men are assertive, there are many who aren't. And women, generally speaking, go for guys who are a little bit more assertive. There's something very attractive about a guy who can take charge. But it gets a little bit tricky here because while women want a guy who is strong and who appears to be able to be in control and to take charge, she doesn't want him to be too controlling, right? So that can be a little bit challenging. So it's about getting towing that fine line and getting the balance just right. So challenges arise where both men and women want to take charge, and women often feel that they're in a position where they often have to back down. And the best way, basically, for men and women to both be heard, to find that equal balance in how they can communicate with one another and be heard, is to speak in a way that's confident without aggression. And when people are confident about what they have to say, they don't have to become aggressive. People only become aggressive, men and women alike, but they're not coming from a position of confidence, but they're coming from a position of, I have to assert my power, and there's some sort of question or doubt about whether they really are an authority in the subject matter or whether they have a right or entitlement to something. And I have a very interesting example of a couple that I'm working with who are they're a dating couple, and basically she's not even assertive. She's very, very aggressive. She's hardcore. And the reason why the couple came to me is because every time they get into an argument, they don't seem to be able to resolve it. And this is a common thing that I have lots and lots of people that I work with. And so the dynamic is like this. She will bring up a topic, or a topic will be raised, doesn't even matter who. And one person will start, and she will start to get very, very agitated and very, very angry, and she'll sort of speak in a very forceful manner. And what happens to him? He backs away and retreats and shuts down, right? And the more aggressive she becomes, the more she shuts down. The more aggressive he becomes, the more he shuts down. So then what happens? What happens to the couple dynamic here? Any thoughts? Ideas?
Farther away.
Pardon? They pull away and they stonewall. And they don't actually get to resolve the issue. But what else is happening here? He's feeling what and she's feeling what? What are each of them starting to feel as they're communicating, trying to communicate with one another? She is feeling... Pardon? Anybody? Thoughts?
She stops respecting him.
She stops to respect him because he is behaving like what? Weak. She's behaving weak. And he's feeling a little emasculated. And he's feeling unattracted to her because she's acting like a man. Exactly. So this is a challenge that happens with lots and lots of couples. So what do we need to do here? So what I've been working with them on is helping them to firstly identify what it is that's inciting her anger, so that she's communicating in such a way that's so aggressive, helping her to sort of calm down a little bit, and helping him, and as a result of her calming down, he sort of comes up a bit. He sort of has space to step up. He has space to really assert himself and to be that giver that she really wants and that she really respects. And as that dynamic improves, they're actually able to resolve their conversations. They're actually able to hear one another. She feels like she's actually in a relationship. She feels that she's actually heard and that he actually cares about her. And she doesn't feel so alone. Because that's often what really happens. Is it's a lot about when you try to get your point across and you're not able to. Women in particular start to feel really alone. Men are happy to often feel alone because they want to feel more independent. But that often doesn't really help in the context of being in a relationship. Okay, so sharing feelings. This is something that was addressed a little bit today, but generally speaking, and of course this is quite a broad generalization, but generally speaking, men are more reluctant to talk about feelings, and they're more likely to discuss facts. And I know that Professor Kozlowski, you might not agree with this entirely, but I think there's a difference also between when a couple are just starting out in a relationship versus when they actually feel comfortable with one another and the relationship is already progressing. So when a couple are just starting out, there's a lot of fear and vulnerability in men. And in general, and this is something that some of the brain research has shown, that men process their emotions much more slowly than women, right? So as a result of them processing their emotions much more slowly, they actually need, like when a woman makes a statement, she's like waiting for that, like come back right away. He needs to like take time, think about it, reflect, and all of a sudden all these things are going through her head. Maybe he's not into me, maybe he's got somebody else on the side. All these different thoughts are going in through her head because she makes a billion connections. When women process emotions using both sides of their brain, men use just one side of their brain, right? So women are they're all fired up and they're wrapped and ready to go with the emotional thing, and men it takes them that little bit longer, and it's okay, but it's really important that we just understand that that's what's really happening here, that they just need a little bit more time, and as women we just need to be a little more gentle and kind and not jump down their throats when they haven't sort of responded to us straight away. Okay. So the other thing with women is that women generally feel more comfortable sharing their feelings because it's a way of enabling connections. That's how women connect with one another. So when it comes to sharing feelings, men and women often get frustrated with each other because it's as though they're talking at cross purposes with one another, which is just like in the example that I just posed earlier. And so basically, a general conversation might go something like this. Okay, so he'll get angry with her because she's acting like a bit of a drama queen and how she's trying to get her point across. She then gets angry with him because he's being cold and analytical. He wishes she would just get over it. And she winds up feeling alone and unheard, and that's the end of the conversation. And that's something that comes up time and time again. Now I'd like to offer an example of a challenge with a client that I was a married couple that I was working with, where we had a challenge with expressing feelings and emotions and how it manifested. It's interesting because this couple too came to me because they were struggling with communication and they would have arguments that would never get resolved. There's maybe a bit of a trend and a theme here. And that's what often people think. They think we just don't know how to communicate, but they don't know what aspect they're struggling with, and they don't know exactly how to pinpoint and identify specifically where they're struggling. So this couple, what happened with this couple was they were married for about 4 years. They had 2 small children. The man was working for his own company. It was just starting up. And the woman was a stay-at-home mom because she had 2 small children, and to be honest, she would have liked to have gone back to work, but she was really struggling with the whole balancing children and work and all that sort of thing. So they decided, that she was going to stay home and look after the children, and he was going to go out and he was going to work. Now, what happened was, though, was that he thought, because she's not working, I'm going to come home from work and I'm going to walk into my palace and the floor is going to be spanking clean and my kids going to be all shiny and beautiful and they're going to be so well behaved and everything's going to be all wonderful. The other thing is that he also was feeling a little bit of anger and resentment towards the fact that she got to spend all the time with the kids and he didn't really. And so there was a lot of mixed emotions about gender roles and how he should feel about, you know, wanting to spend time with the children and things like that. And so the way that he would often speak to her is he would come home from work, he'd see that the house looked like a pit, and he'd have a go at her, and he'd say, I can't believe this house looks like this, and he would just go off and sort of rile at her. And she would retreat, right? And she would just sort of shut down, right? That was the dynamic here, kind of the opposite of the other couple in a way, in terms of the male-female thing. And what was happening was that what we had to sort of identify was what it was that was really causing his anger and why, and how he can sort of shift things around. So firstly, he didn't actually feel that he was entitled to have feelings. He grew up in a household where men, or boys, I should say, when he was growing up as a boy, he didn't feel that he was allowed to have feelings. You know, he grew up in that, you know, little boys don't cry, suck it up, get over it, deal with it, move on. And so he had always told himself, I'm not allowed to have feelings. And what that did to him was he just, whenever he had feelings, he didn't really know how to, he didn't identify them, he just acted on them, right? And when we act upon feelings, what happens? We become aggressive, we become angry, we become aggressive, we become like not happy people, right? So when we were able to identify the fact that he had feelings and that he was allowed to and invited and encouraged to share his feelings, and his wife learned various tools and skills to encourage him to share his feelings without the anger side of things, he was able to speak to her in a much more gentle way. And once he was able to sort of gain control over his feelings, he was able to speak more gently and more calmly. And also he also had to face the fact that that he had some differences about gender roles. Like they had he really wanted to be more involved with the children than what she had wanted him to be. So they had to sort of talk through all these different issues. And once they were actually able to express and talk about in a gentle sort of way, that shifted the entire dynamic of the relationship. Okay. So basically, when men generally share their feelings, it often means that they feel out of control. And women will often get upset because they'll often express how they feel in a very emotional way, which causes men to feel that they have to fix their problems, right? That's what men often think, right? She's sharing a problem with me. That means that she wants me to get on my toolbox and fix her problem. So what women need to do in a relationship very early on is to say, when I share my feelings with you, I don't want you to say anything. I'm just sharing with you because I want to connect with you. I want a little empathy. I want a little hugging and cuddles and things like that. But I do not want you to fix my problem. I'll go to my therapist for that. Okay, moving right along. So the third type of couple I want to talk about is the engaged couple, right? So the engaged couple is a very unique type of couple because it's a very brief time in their lives when they're like that. Usually speaking, it's not like a long extended period. And 2 minutes, hey, okay. Maybe 3. Okay, so anyway, so the engaged couple is my pal. So anyways, the engaged couple, basically, what happens is they're sort of changing status, right? So up until they get engaged, they're trying to like be really kind and sweet and show off their best side, basically. And once they get engaged, the guard sort of comes down, and then all of a sudden, they sort of feel like they need to sort of stake their claim and sort of be a little more territorial. And there's a lot of, for men in particular, there's a lot of fear of losing their independence, and they also feel this sudden need to, to really be on top of things and really take charge. And women have a very different approach to being engaged. They're like suddenly excited about connecting and talking and sharing and all this sort of thing. They don't want independence anymore. They're done with the independence thing. They've been there, done that. They're ready to move on into the sharing side of things. And so once again, men and women often find themselves at cross purposes here. And so basically I'm going to share a little example of a couple who had very different ideas about making decisions. They came to see me about maybe 6 weeks before they were to get married, and they were really struggling to make decisions. And he had a very different approach to decision making than she. His approach was you do tons and tons of research on any given thing, like it could be, and then you finally make a decision. And her approach was, she was very much more in touch with her feelings. She was a very in touch with her feelings kind of woman, and she was like, I'm just going to go with whatever feels good and right, and I'll feel good about that. So they're coming from vastly different approaches in terms of how they go about making decisions. And this is generally a male-female difference, although you might find it reversed as well. And basically, what they needed to do is they needed to find a way of, firstly, not feeling like I'm right, you're wrong, because they were definitely getting into that sort of thing, but they needed to just express that, they first needed to understand what was underlying why each of them needed to make the decisions in the way that they did. And once they were able to sort of challenge them their basic assumptions about how they make decisions, they were able to get much more together and find very good compromise solutions when it comes to making really important decisions. Now, I saw this couple about 5 months later, and it was lovely to see them because everything had changed for them, because they were already ready to buy a house. They were already gearing up for making a family. They were already making major important life decisions. And there were no dramas anymore. And the reason why I think it's so important to bring this up is because so many people think, oh, I'm just gonna work on my relationship. I'll come and work on my relationship when I have problems and things like that. And yes, this couple did come to me when they did have some challenges, but so many people wait till years and years down the track to finally start working through their challenges. Every single couple, because they're different, because men have their brains and women have their brains, and there's a lot of differences in terms of how they approach one another. If they don't really know how to talk about their differences and share different things, and they don't even understand what the underlying assumptions are of how they approach things, they're going to often be working at cross purposes, and they're going to piss each other off big time. So basically, the better able we are to understand our differences, create a safe space to share our needs, the more our partners will be able to understand us, the more able we will be to hear and be heard in a connected and constructive manner, and ultimately build better relationships. Thank you very much.